There are productive ways and there are destructive ways to apply discipline. And it's the same as a hammer, okay? You can have a hammer and you can use it to construct a house, or you can have a hammer and you can knock someone's head in, you know? So hello, angels, baddies, and bitches. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Amber Akilla. We're in the business of being hot and having fun, cute, chaotic, and critical thinking. You can follow me on all the things, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, and SoundCloud for music and mixes. Subscribe to the Patreon at Amber Akilla, and subscribe to the podcast Friend Crush with Amber Akilla. Thank you so much for subscribing and supporting the channel. As of today, the day of filming, I have 20,000 subscribers, which is crazy. I mean, I feel like having 1,000 subscribers was already an achievement, so I can't believe that I have 20,000. So I'm very grateful. And yeah, I hope we get to slay, grow, and be hot and have fun together. Continue to do so. So today's video, I want to talk about increasing your baseline. So I talked about how everything is vibes in a previous video, and the crying gap, etc. Obviously, I'm not a mental health professional, and my channel is about me just sharing my own experience, thoughts, observations, research. It's not about becoming more like me. It's about becoming more you. Okay. I don't really believe in prescribing like, okay, if you just do these things, like your life will change and you'll be a millionaire, whatever. I feel like everyone's path in life is individual and specific to them. And it's about figuring out how you can embrace that authentically, so that you can live your best life, so that the challenges that you face are in service of your higher self or your best self, or you being hot and having fun, and not challenges that you face that service other people's benefit at the detriment of your own, or challenges you face creating more challenges for yourself without the feeling of progress and a sense of achievement. You know what I mean? I feel like I'll do a video, I think, in the future about sources of validation. Okay, we'll touch on that another time. So everything is vibes. This is time. This is frequency. Low vibrational, guilt, shame, depression, jealousy. Those are some examples. Higher vibration. Okay, well, here we have neutrality, boredom, calm, optimism, self-love, joy, empowerment, compassion. Looking at the frequency spiral, you can also look at like the stages of human consciousness, which I haven't done like a lot of research in. I only have a very surface level understanding, but I think it's kind of like the same general principle. Like you can be born at a certain baseline or default, and then life is always going to be up and down. Okay, like a combination of your internal world and your external world will determine your experience of life and how you are processing the external experience. How do we integrate the spiritual, the material, e.g. the mind and the body, you know? So personally, I feel like aiming for a constant state of enlightenment and high vibration is overrated and kind of unrealistic for most people. And realistically, it's about increasing your baseline. So you might be born with a naturally lower baseline, okay? And I feel like this is me because I had a natural propensity to depression, anxiety, chronic overthinking, and like catastrophizing everything, whether that's a result of my personality, my birth chart, or traumas that I've experienced. I don't think it really matters. What matters is what I have done to increase my baseline to one that's like up here. Okay, so your baseline can change at all different stages of your life. And I think it's about developing an awareness of how you're feeling and creating a safe space for yourself and your thoughts and your emotions in a non-judgmental way so that you can be intentional about the direction that you act on. You know what I mean? So it is mind over matter in the sense that your perspective and your inner world ultimately determines how you process the outer world and how you respond to it. But a combination of mind and matter will determine your character and will determine the quality of your experience, if that makes sense. Because I could just think or desire for things to be better, but if I don't actually do anything about it, then like the forces outside of me will push down on me, okay? Gravity is pushing on you, and entropy is like the potential for things to like turn into chaos. And if you don't have enough energy to maintain order, then things will just naturally like slip through your fingers in a way, you know? As I said before, it's always going to take effort to move your way up, okay? You cannot bring other people up, but anybody can bring you down. That is the nature of gravity. And I feel like we're in a society that conditions us to believe that we need some sort of external thing to make everything better. And I'm not underestimating the power behind institutions and like systemic oppression, but I think we also are conditioned to underestimate our own power as well in our ability to decide to what degree am I internalizing the conditioning that I am powerless, you know what I mean? And taking action and understanding like the way that you've internalized conditioning and shifting the way that you respond to it, I think is how you actually start to make radical change in your life. And step by step, you're able to shift your path from one that is like a self-fulfilling prophecy or like a negative loop into a more positive trajectory spiral. I'm not saying that you just need to like change your habits and you will become a millionaire and you will achieve societal success. I'm saying that when you learn to observe your patterns of thoughts and behaviors and you redirect towards a goal that you feel is going to be fulfilling for you, that's when you start to live authentically and you can define success for yourself. Okay, so if you've listened to my podcast, I've spoken a lot about how I used to have a very limited idea of what it meant to be successful as a DJ, for example, because I come from a very small town and the only way to be successful is to work locally, then domestically, and then internationally. And when I moved to Shanghai, I still carried that idea of success with me because I watched a lot of my peers pursue that path and receive recognition for it. And I used to ask myself, like, is that something that I should be working towards? And I feel like I was always torn in different directions about it. But the more experience that I had being intentional with the way that I worked in Shanghai, the more I realized that maybe my idea of success is way too limited. And I don't actually feel like pursuing that form of success as defined by external sources and something that I had personally internalized was going to be fulfilling for me. I don't think it's like suitable for my personality. I think I have other interests like content creating that are not compatible with my original idea of what success had to be, you know? So I've redefined what success means and how I develop and work towards it for myself according to my own specific set of circumstances and interests and desires, etc. So it's not about do these things and you'll be accepted by society, but like do these things and you'll start to develop more acceptance for yourself, and the way that you experience the world will naturally shift and change at different stages of your life as long as you maintain this consistency in having an awareness of how you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're working towards, and doing it in a way that is as non-judgmental as possible. It's not that the judgment never comes up, it's that your ability to observe the judgment, accept the judgment, and not resist the judgment improves. And then you are also able to be less judgmental of others, and you're able to be of better service to others as well. And you'll be more discerning in how you show up for the people around you and your community, etc. So changing your baseline. I think like I am naturally a very chaotic person, which is why it's cute, chaotic, and critical thinking. So for me, I used to think like discipline is overrated. I just want to be free. I don't want to have to like, follow all these little rules. I don't need like a to-do list. I don't need a planner. Let me just go with the vibes. And for some people, maybe that would work, but at the same time, like I do want to achieve things, and that does require like a sense of order. So discipline and my relationship with discipline has changed a lot over time, because I think for a lot of us, we associate discipline with punishment and with limitations and restriction. But discipline exists sort of on a spectrum, okay? So as with everything in life, you can apply something in a productive way or in a destructive way. So when discipline is productive, it's about love and growth and productive, okay? Constructive. When discipline is applied in a destructive way, destructive, punishment, punitive, decay. There are productive ways and there are destructive ways to apply discipline, and it's the same as a hammer, okay? You can have a hammer and you can use it to construct a house, or you can have a hammer and you can knock someone's head in, So discipline, I always refer to this book, The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. Do I have it here? Maybe I can read out. The beginning of the book, Problems and Pain. Life is difficult. This is a great truth, one of the greatest truths. It is a great truth because once we truly see this truth, we transcend it. Once we truly know that life is difficult, once we truly understand and accept it, then life is no longer difficult, because once it is accepted, the fact that life is difficult no longer matters, okay? So this is kind of like pick your hard. It's going to be hard and it's going to take effort to be hot, the same way it's hard and it takes effort to be ugly, but which would you rather? Would you rather the end result be you're hot or that you're ugly? And I don't mean this in a superficial way. I mean this in like a spiritual way. Integration between mind and body. So most do not fully see this truth that life is difficult. Instead, they moan more or less incessantly, noisily or subtly about the enormity of their problems, their burdens and their difficulties, as if life were generally easy, as if life should be easy. They voice their belief, noisily or subtly, that their difficulties represent a unique kind of affliction that should not be, and that has somehow been especially visited upon them, or else upon their families, their tribe, their class, their nation, their race, or even their species, and not upon others. I know about this moaning because I have done my share. Life is a series of problems. Do we want to moan about them or solve them? Do we want to teach our children to solve them? Discipline is the basic set of tools we require to solve life's problems. Without discipline, we can solve nothing. With only some discipline, we can only solve some problems. With total discipline, we can solve all problems. Stand on business. What makes life difficult is that the process of confronting and solving problems is a painful one. Problems, depending upon their nature, evoke in us frustration or grief or sadness or loneliness or guilt or regret or anger or fear or anxiety or anguish or despair. These are uncomfortable feelings, often very uncomfortable, often as painful as any kind of physical pain, sometimes equaling the very worst kind of physical pain. Indeed, it is because of the pain that events or conflicts engender in us that we call them problems. And since life poses an endless series of problems, life is always difficult and is full of pain as well as joy. So it's kind of like the edge of your comfort zone, okay? When you are experiencing anger, fear, anxiety, anguish, or despair about something, that is an indicator that you're at the edge of your comfort zone. It's not something that you need to fear or eliminate. It's something that you can learn to integrate into your experience of life and embrace. Embracing the challenges that are in service of your higher self, of you being hot and having fun. And the thing is like these feelings can come up whether you're moving in a direction that's going to be ultimately beneficial for you or not. And the process of life is being able to reflect and assess whether that is the case or not, Yet it is in this whole process of meeting and solving problems that life has its meaning. Problems are the cutting edge that distinguishes between success and failure. Problems call forth our courage and our wisdom. Indeed, they create our courage and our wisdom. It is only because of problems that we grow mentally and spiritually. When we desire to encourage the growth of the human spirit, we challenge and encourage the human capacity to solve problems, just as in school we deliberately set problems for our children to solve. It is through the pain of confronting and resolving problems that we learn. As Benjamin Franklin said, those things that hurt instruct. It is for this reason that wise people learn not to dread, but actually to welcome problems and actually to welcome the pain of problems. Most of us are not so wise. Fearing the pain involved, almost all of us, to a greater or lesser degree, attempt to avoid problems. We procrastinate, hoping that they will go away. We ignore them, forget them, pretend they do not exist. We even take drugs to assist us in ignoring them, so that by deadening ourselves to the pain, we can forget the problems that cause the pain. We attempt to skirt around problems rather than meet them head on. We attempt to get out of them rather than to suffer through them. This tendency to avoid problems and the emotional suffering inherent in them is the primary basis of all human mental illness. Since most of us have this tendency to a greater or lesser degree, most of us are mentally ill to a greater or lesser degree, lacking complete mental health. Some of us will go to quite extraordinary lengths to avoid our problems and the suffering they cause, proceeding far afield from all that is clearly good and sensible, in order to try and find an easy way out, building the most elaborate fantasies in which to live, sometimes to the total exclusion of reality. In the succinctly elegant words of Carl Jung, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. But the substitute itself ultimately becomes more painful than the legitimate suffering it was designed to avoid. The neurosis itself becomes the biggest problem. True to form, many will then attempt to avoid this pain and this problem in turn, building layer upon layer of neuroses. Fortunately, however, some possess the courage to face their neuroses and begin, usually with the help of psychotherapy, to learn how to experience legitimate suffering that results from dealing with problems. We also avoid the growth that problems demand from us. It is for this reason that in chronic mental illness, we stop growing, we become stuck, and without healing, the human spirit begins to shrivel. Therefore, let us inculcate ourselves and in our children the means of achieving mental and spiritual health. By this I mean, let us teach ourselves and our children the necessity for suffering and the value thereof, the need to face problems directly and to experience the pain involved. I have stated that discipline is a basic set of tools we require to solve life's problems. It will become clear that these tools are techniques of suffering, means by which we experience the pain of problems in such a way as to work them through and solve them successfully, learning and growing in the process. When we teach ourselves and our children discipline, we are teaching them and ourselves how to suffer and also how to grow. What are these tools, these techniques of suffering, these means of experiencing the pain of problems constructively that I call discipline? There are 4. Delaying of gratification, acceptance of responsibility, dedication to truth, and balancing. As will be evident, these are not complex tools whose application demands extensive training. To the contrary, they are simple tools and almost all children are adept in their use by the age of 10. Yet presidents and kings will often forget to use them to their own downfall. The problem lies not in the complexity of these tools, but in the will to use them. For they are tools with which pain is confronted rather than avoided, and if one seeks to avoid legitimate suffering, then one will avoid the use of these tools. Therefore, after analyzing each of these tools, we shall in the next section examine the will to use them, which is love. Okay, so I feel like I'm going to have to do another video about discipline specifically and breaking down the 4 parts of discipline as described in this book. But I think the key from the extract that I've just read is that being able to improve your baseline is not about avoiding low vibrational feelings or undesirable feelings. It's about integrating them into the process of growth. So I had someone ask me on a different video, how do I sit with my feelings? When I sit with myself, I feel really emotionally overwhelmed. And I always talk about meditation, journaling, thought dumping, and physical activity to get into your body. So it's not like you sit with your feelings one day and then you're free from feeling negative feelings ever again. But I think if you're like really emotionally overwhelmed, obviously talking to a mental health professional, but remind yourself that it's a process, okay? You are slowly untangling the weeds in the garden of your mind and body and spirit. So I have other videos where I talk about how your life is like a garden, right? You might only have an awareness of like this much of the garden, okay? And you're like really focused on growing flowers in this area, but because you avoid your negative feelings, there are weeds that grow outside of your conscious awareness that actually take up a greater amount of space in your consciousness than the part that's doing well, okay? So when you start trying to increase your baseline and diffusing your awareness around like your ego and all the things that you identify with and all the external things that you think are responsible for your suffering, I'm not saying they don't contribute to it. I'm just saying the way that you relate to them has a really big impact on how you experience life. When you start to diffuse your awareness, it's going to be really overwhelming to realize like, oh, there's all these parts of my mind that I didn't know existed, and parts of myself that I haven't integrated into my awareness. And sometimes it'll be like trauma from your family, from experiences you had growing up, from the environment that you're in. Like you might be in a toxic environment without even realizing. That's happened to me so many times, where I've been in a friendship or relationship or a job where I've normalized the amount of anxiety and suffering that I'm experiencing on a day-to-day basis as a result of making it seem like it's my fault that someone is mistreating me, or that I should have to tolerate treatment that is of no benefit to me long term, you know? So that can be a really confronting and overwhelming process, but it's about creating a non-judgmental space. For yourself, okay? Because oftentimes we're looking outside of ourselves for acceptance. Like once I'm accepted by my friend group, by society, by my family, by my work, etc., by the people that follow you online or whatever, then you will be happy. Then all of the fucked up things that you've been through will be worth it. But actually, you can circumvent this entirely by having acceptance for yourself. When you are able to sit with yourself and observe all the crazy ass things that you think, all the chaotic emotions that you experience in a non-judgmental way, I feel like this is a superpower, because then you will naturally take everything less personally. You will recognize the power that you have to decide to what degree external things will affect you and where your attention is going to be directed, because it's inevitable that you're going to have haters, okay? Whether you're doing well in life, whether you're doing badly, there's always going to be people that have a problem with you, because everybody's got problems, okay? And everybody is projecting all the time. But once you can create a safe space for yourself and you can integrate your shadow, okay? So like ultimately the weedy part is the shadow. And sometimes there are things in your shadow that are actually positive traits that you have repressed or like pushed out of your consciousness because someone shamed you for them in the past, or because someone made it seem like it wasn't cool or whatever, acceptable to be a certain way, you know? So being able to integrate this into your consciousness and actually decide which parts of you you want to work with, you want to emphasize, you want to develop, is a radical process, okay? I have been bullied for every single part of my existence since I was a kid, okay? I was Asian in a white community. I was like weird art girl in this like jockey social group. I was a DJ at law school. Ugh, the list is never ending, okay? I was mouthy, opinionated, and I always was criticizing the world around me. And now I get paid to do all those things, okay? So I had to create a non-judgmental space for myself in order to be like, okay, what are the things that I enjoy doing? What are the things that I want to contribute to the world around me? How can like spaces that I enter benefit from the way that I integrate and develop and improve myself? And how can I redirect my focus to that rather than the people who have their own problems that they're projecting onto me and are not contributing anything to my life other than negativity, okay? So focus on the win-win and the mutually beneficial exchange between you and yourself, and then also you and the outside world, your relationships, your community, your work, etc. The non-judgmental space is important. So I talk about meditation and thought dumping as like observing your thoughts and feelings. It's not about not thinking or not feeling, it's just letting your thoughts and feelings come up as they are. And when you have this practice and you do it consistently, it's like going to the gym. You know, you don't go to the gym once and train muscles and then you're strong forever. You have to consistently go to maintain muscles. And when you lose your consistency, then you start to lose your strength. And that's the same as your ability to keep your mind sharp and your ability to maintain this non-judgmental space. It's going to fluctuate just naturally, okay? The cycles of the moon, your hormonal cycle, the events happening around you, but it's about maintaining this baseline, okay? And having self-compassion and grace with yourself is a really important part of this, because you don't need to be perfect at all times. I am someone who can hold myself to an impossible standard that I will probably never be able to meet, but I'm constantly negotiating with myself and saying, just do it, and then you can improve as you go, rather than waiting for everything to be perfect in order for it to have value. There's actually value in the attempt, and you're more likely to learn from failure than success, So non-judgmental space for yourself. And I also try to extend this to my friends as well, and just people that follow me. And when they ask me questions, obviously sometimes I will be sassy about it because it's cute, chaotic, and critical thinking, but I try to encourage people to not see everything through just a moral binary, because it's a trap. Okay, it's a control mechanism. And it's not that you don't have your own moral standard that you uphold, but trying to see everything through morality is not going to benefit you, because morality is something that we project onto reality. It's not embedded into reality, actually. The lion kills the deer because that's the natural order of things. You can't convince the lion out of wanting to do that from a moral point of view, because their morality is inherently different to yours. That was a very poorly formed metaphor, but you know what I mean. So the non-judgmental space is important. Meditation, journaling, practice, whatever works for you, okay? Experiment. I have the habit tracker, free habit tracker link. Taking hot girl walks, dancing, physical activity, getting into your body. And obviously there are so many things that have to do with how your baseline is calibrated. So it's not just mental, emotional, spiritual, but physical as well. Okay, so your diet can have a really big impact on your baseline. If you're not eating whole foods and you eat a mostly processed diet, this is going to have a really big effect on how you process your thoughts and feelings, because you're having chemical releases in your body. So you want to have high quality fuel. Okay, so I recognize that there are different limitations for people in terms of their access to good quality food, but I would recommend doing research on how to have a well-rounded diet for a low cost, if this is something that might be a limitation for you. Because I've looked into this before, and I think the health food industrial complex is insane. You don't need to be spending money on a bunch of supplements or superfoods. In fact, rice, whole grain, vegetable, potato, beans, just basic forms of protein, eggs, tinned fish, etc. All of these things you can have access to on a budget. You just kind of have to be smart and creative about it, and you have to be dedicated to wanting the best for yourself. You know what I mean? Even though I can afford superfoods and all these supplements, I still keep my diet relatively basic, because I just don't feel that it's necessary to be spending all this additional money on things where the impact on your health is quite minimal for the most part, So physical health, diet, exercise, sleep. Okay, within diet as well, hydration. Wake up in the morning and drink a glass of warm water. It's so important to stay hydrated. Your brain is water, your body is water. You need to make sure you're drinking enough fluid. Exercise, moving your body, endorphin release, deep stretching as well. Massage can help you to release trauma in different parts of your body. I think a lot of people carry tension in their hips, which is where a lot of emotional trauma can be stored. So flexible body equals a flexible mind. Sleep. This is the hardest one for me. My life goal is to be able to go to bed at 11. Currently, I go to bed at 1 a.m. Sleep, very important. Okay, financial. How are you spending, earning, and saving, investing money? Everyone's personal situation and needs are going to be different, but I feel especially with social media and being constantly advertised to, the way that we consume can get a little bit out of hand. At least what I'm observing on social media, I'm like, cool, you don't need to be buying that much stuff. And I love nice things, but really observing the way that you consume can be a very radical act. I think digital as well is now its own category because we are so online now. So thinking about the media that you consume, how much time do you spend on social media, what kind of content are you consuming? That's going to have a huge impact on your baseline, okay? If you are constantly looking at negative news and you are internalizing and like processing these like negative emotions as a result of watching negative news, you're just making your life harder. You know, it's like you're pouring lava on your mental garden whenever you do that. So for me, I'm like so sensitive to negative news that I generally avoid. I try to stay informed in like a top line level, and I try to read books about politics and history so that I understand why the world is the way that it is or how it became to be the way that it is, rather than just looking at day-to-day events, because it's going to be fucked up all the time. Okay, there's like literally no situation in where humans are around and there isn't chaos. So for me, I can't be like reading the news all the time. It depresses me. But for other friends, I don't know, like they're really good at staying up to date with things and it doesn't really emotionally affect them. So each person is going to be different. I have to take a day a week off of TikTok and Instagram to stay sane, minimum 1 day, if not 1 to 3 days, depending on where I'm at. Other people, maybe they can doom scroll all day and they're doing okay. Personally, I feel like that would be insane. Like you actually have to be built different. But think about your digital consumption habits. Okay, and then like physical space. So your living space, okay? Are you maintaining tidy space? Do you have a lot of stuff that you don't need? I'm looking around my room right now and like I desperately need to do a purge. Even like where you live, you know, like if you want to move somewhere because you don't like your physical environment, start making a plan. I'm not saying that just because you want to move that you should do it tomorrow, but according to your current circumstances and your situation, how can you assess all these other areas of your life to get you to where you need to be? I think one of the greatest privileges that you can have as a person is to live somewhere where you feel at home, whatever that may look like to you at any given stage of your life. Like I'm so grateful that for me, growing up in Perth, I felt just like not connected to my physical surroundings at all. I'm grateful for the experience. I'm grateful that I'm from there. I'm grateful to be able to go back there. But now to be able to live in Shanghai and feel like a sense of contentment with where I am, and that's a feeling that I was only able to achieve in the last few years. You know, prior to that, I always felt like I had to be going somewhere or testing out somewhere to find out where I should live. Could I live here? And now I'm like, I enjoy living here. And if I move somewhere else, so be it. But I'm enjoying the feeling of not having to like be somewhere else. What else? Community and connections. Your friends. Are you friends with people that you don't feel aligned with? Are you friends with people that are negative? If you are on the trajectory and on the path to improving your baseline, you cannot be around people that are down here and want to see you fail, okay? You can be around people that want to come up with you, but not everybody wants to do that. And only when you start making steps towards your own personal growth will it become clear to you who around you would prefer that you stay down in the dumps, okay? And unfortunately, you'll probably have to go through like a social purge. Been there, done that. It's not easy, but it is necessary. If you are meant to come together at a later date, you will. If not, that's okay. Everyone is on their own individual journey. Never assume you've peaked. Never assume that you've met everybody you could possibly meet in your life or you know everything you could possibly know, you know? Growth mindset. So community, and also, you know, are you contributing to something outside of yourself? I think that's really important. Wanting to become a better version of you cannot just be self-serving. I think it also has to require an element of service to others, okay? And each person's community and contribution is going to be different according to their circumstances. For some people, it might just be focused on one person. For others, it might be a small community or a large community. Explore the possibilities. I think finally would be creativity as well. I believe that everybody is creative. Just by virtue of being a person, you're creating your existence. But the creative industry makes us feel like, or brainwashes us into thinking that creativity is something that only a certain few people get to express or profit off of. And I think that creativity ultimately doesn't have to be profited off of. It's just profited off of in very limited situations and for the purpose of selling and consuming, okay? But creativity, I think, is sort of connected to community in the sense that you want to be able to contribute something outside of yourself, doing something that allows you to connect to yourself and the ideas and the inspiration that swirl around in your brain, whether that's for profit or not profit, that will allow you to increase your baseline. You know, whenever I've been really depressed for long periods of time, I haven't felt creative. I haven't given myself the space to be creative because I've been so focused on being sad and being defined by my sadness that I haven't been able to create a non-judgmental space for my ideas and for my desire to make some kind of contribution outside of myself. And you have to sort of take baby steps, okay? It's not like you can just magically go from 0 to 100. Even if you go from 0 to 100 temporarily, it will require a great deal of effort for you to maintain that, you know? So people talk about like quantum leaping and stuff. I haven't done a lot of research on that, so I can't speak on that, but I feel like the most sustainable way is to take it one step at a time. So use the habit tracker, focus on baby steps. You know, if you're going like this, you will understand this space and you will appreciate the space and the contrast so much more than someone who just goes like this, okay? The potential for shooting up and crashing down is like too great and too scary for me. So I feel like taking it step by step is important. And there will be events that occur that will make this contrast more observable to you. Because when you're in it, you don't really like understand, or you don't really have a proper gauge for the progress that you're making or the growth that you're experiencing because you're just like in it day by day. But there will be events that happen that challenge you. And you'll notice, oh, my response to this is actually different to how it would have been a year ago. Or my relationship to this trigger is very different to how it was 3 years ago, a week ago, whatever. So remember that it's a spiral. Okay, you want to achieve this. You don't want to be going around in a loop. You want to break free and spiral. Yeah, it's not about removing these emotions or only experiencing these emotions, but integrating it together. I literally don't have space anymore. I don't even know how to demonstrate this, but spiral. Things will happen that trigger these emotions. Things will happen that trigger these emotions, but you will have full awareness and you'll be able to integrate them into the baseline, okay? And when you feel like a sense of contentment and ability to be alone, I feel like that's when true like integration starts to happen. But yeah, it's an ongoing process. I feel like for me, it was like 2 to 3 years, and even still, I'm like on the path. But I've accepted that this is what life is going to be like, that this is what being hot and having fun is going to take. You know, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to adhere to any external standard. You just have to create your own internal standards. And at the end of the day, like, your opinion of yourself is more important than anyone else's opinion of you. You know what I mean? If you think highly of yourself and you are living in a way that's true to the opinion of yourself that you are working with, nobody can tell you shit if that's, you know, when you're doing that. Yeah, those are my thoughts today. Good luck on increasing your baseline. It's possible. If not for yourself, for the people that you share this experience with. You know, I always think about how sometimes doing it for yourself isn't enough when you hate yourself. You know, like, I've been down here before and I'm like, why should I try to become better? I don't even care that much about me. But then I would think like, well, don't I want to be like the best daughter that I can be? Don't I want to be the best friend that I can be? The best collaborator that I can be? The best employee or the best anything, okay? Like, I don't want to be around people that are negative and depressing, so I should not be a negative and depressing person either. I want my energy to be matched. I want me and whoever I'm around to feel like together the possibilities for being hot and having fun are endless, not limited. So, yeah. Thanks for tuning in today. Thank you for 20,000 subscribers. Stay hot and having fun. Follow me on all the things. Subscribe to the Patreon, subscribe to the podcast. I love you lots. Stay hydrated. Tell your friends and family that you love them. I will speak to you soon. Bye! Mwah!